The Zorak warship Vornake loomed over the human colony world of New Tellus, a predator circling its prey. Inside its dimly lit command chamber, the stench of metal and ozone hung heavy, mingling with the musk of reptilian bodies. Commander Vothar stood rigid, his scaled face twisted in disbelief as he stared at the trembling junior officer before him. The young Zorak Grishik, barely out of his spawning cycle, saluted with an air of misplaced confidence. Vothar's voice was a slow, venomous hiss. "Tell me, you did what?" Grishik puffed out his broad chest, his spine tail flicking with excitement. "I took a human child, Commander. A mere cub. Their kind is weak. This will show them their place." The chamber fell into dead silence. Even the bridge crew, stationed at their glowing consoles, stiffened. No one spoke. No one breathed. Vothar's claws curled into fists, his mind reeling. He had commanded fleets, raised colonies, and crushed rebellions. But this was suicide. "You stole a human child?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of 1,000 battlefields. Grishik, still oblivious to the growing horror in the room, sneered. "Yes, the humans are soft. They will beg for..." Vothar's strike was faster than a plasma bolt. His claws wrapped around Grishik's throat, lifting him off the ground with terrifying ease. The younger Zorak gasped, his eyes bulging as he struggled. "You fool," Vothar growled. "Do you not understand what you've done?" Grishik's legs flailed as he clawed at his commander's iron grip. "See, Commander, You think humanity will negotiate? That they will beg for mercy?" Vothar snarled. "You ignorant spawnling, you have doomed us all." With a snarl of disgust, he hurled Grishik across the chamber. The officer crashed against the bulkhead, slumping into a dazed heap. The crew remained frozen in fear. A cold, robotic voice chimed from the ship's control panel. "Warning! Unidentified fleet inbound. FDL signatures detected. Estimated arrival in 45 minutes. The words hammered into Vothar's skull like a war drum. Too fast. Far too fast. Human retaliation fleets shouldn't have been able to arrive so soon. Not unless... His blood turned to ice. Not unless they had already been hunting. The humans had not been waiting for a ransom. They had not been deliberating. They had been tracking them from the moment the child was taken. Vothar staggered to his command console, his clawed fingers racing across the hollow interface. He pulled up the intercepted human transmissions, scanning for any diplomatic messages, any attempt at negotiation. There were none. There was only a single communique, broadcast across all channels. "We are coming." His throat tightened. Where's the child now?" he demanded. One of the bridge officers hesitated. H.E. is in holding cell 3. Commander. He appears unharmed. We were studying his vitals, but... Return him. Now!" Vothar's voice cracked like a whip. Grishik, still sprawled against the bulkhead, coughed. "Return him? But, Commander, they are primitives." Vothar whirled, his fangs bared. "You do not understand, you ignorant hatchling. Humans are not like the others we have conquered. They do not plead when wounded. They do not submit when threatened." He jabbed a claw at the glowing tactical display, where a swarm of human warships now surged through the system, their formation tight, deliberate. They destroy. The ship shuddered as their sensors updated. New contacts, dozens of them, appearing out of nowhere. Enemy fleet arrival in 10 minutes. "By the void," one of the officers whispered. They weren't responding to us. They were already in motion. Vothar gritted his teeth. The humans had anticipated this. They had prepared. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "All ships retreat. Now!" Another officer, a younger one, turned in alarm. "Commander, our hyperdrives are still recalibrating." Vothar's claws dug into the control panel. Too late, too slow. A new transmission came through, overriding all other signals. A human voice, deep, controlled. seething with fury. "This is General Marcus Steele, Supreme Commander of Earth's Retaliation Fleet." The bridge fell silent. Even the hum of the ship's system seemed to hush in deference to the voice. "You have taken something that does not belong to you." A pause. A silence, so heavy it felt like the ship itself was holding its breath. Then the next words came, slow and deliberate. "You will not live to regret it." The transmission cut. A new warning blared across the bridge. Multiple torpedo locks detected. The first human missiles were already on their way. The first missile struck the Voron AK with surgical precision, bypassing its outer shields like they were made of paper. A tremor rippled through the warship's hull, a deep, sickening groan of metal under pressure. The bridge lights flickered. Sparks rained from overloaded control panels. Commander Vothar gripped the edge of his command console, his claws digging deep into the metal. His mind raced through every strategic maneuver he had learned in his decades of war, but nothing prepared him for this, for humans hunting them like beasts. "Return fire!" barked Second Officer Gerlach, his voice shrill with panic. "Deploy countermeasures." "No!" Vothar snapped, slamming a fist against the console. "Do not engage. Focus all power to shields and evasive maneuvers." Another impact, this time closer. The deck lurched beneath them as another human warhead detonated against their starboard engine, ripping apart armor plating. Flames and oxygen vented into space, exposing the glowing remains of the thrusters. The ship's AI screeched a warning. Primary propulsion at 47%. Hull integrity compromised. Vothar cursed under his breath. This was no ordinary fleet. The humans had predicted every movement, anticipated their defensive countermeasures, and now they were dismantling them piece by piece. Gerlach turned to him, his eyes filled with desperation. "Commander, we must fight. The humans will tear us apart if we so much as breathe the wrong way." Vothar cut in. His voice was low, controlled, but beneath it a deep, primal fear churned. He had seen human tactics before. They were ruthless, precise, but this was extermination. He turned to his communications officer. "Send out a sector-wide transmission. Surrender beacon active. Make it clear we will." A new transmission cut through his orders. The holographic display flickered to life. A human figure materialized before them. A man clad in a midnight blue military uniform, the insignia of Supreme Commander of Earth's Retaliation Fleet emblazoned on his chest. General Marcus Steele. His expression was stone, his gaze the calm of a storm moments before it ripped the world apart. "Commander Vothar," Steele said, his voice carrying the weight of unforgiving judgment. "We know the child is aboard your vessel." Vothar hesitated. He could feel the eyes of his crew on him. The younger officers, Gerlach, the weapons chief, even the medics huddled near the bulkheads. They all waited to see if he could negotiate their survival. Vothar forced himself to speak. "General Steele, this was an unauthorized action by a rogue officer." "We?" Steele's jaw clenched. His voice, when it came, was ice. "I am not interested in your excuses." The holographic feed zoomed out, revealing a live tactical map of the system. The human fleet had already encircled them. No escape vectors, no blind spots, just death, tightening like a noose. Steele stepped closer to the projection. His eyes, those dark, piercing eyes, bore into Vothar's soul. "I will give you one chance." His voice dropped to a near whisper, a quiet thunderclap of impending doom. "Return. The child." Silence. For the first time in his long military career, Vothar felt small. His claws tightened at his sides. He knew the truth, even if his officers hadn't realized it yet. The moment the child was returned, the Voronkai was already dead. The only question was how many seconds they had left. Vothar's mind raced through contingencies, hyperspace jumps, counterattacks, feigned surrenders, but nothing would work. The humans weren't waiting for diplomacy. They were waiting for a reason to finish this. And the moment that child was safely back in their hands. The killing would begin. Another explosion rocked the ship, not from weapons fire, but from inside. Deck 4, holding Bay 3, the child cell. A crewman shouted over the alarms. "Commander, the holding bay has been breached." No, Vothar's heart lurched. He turned toward the tactical screen, his stomach twisting as a red marker flared inside their ship's schematics. Not human forces, not an external boarding party. Something inside. The transmission from General Steele remained open. The human leader hadn't moved. His hands were clasped behind his back, his posture calm. But in his eyes, a flicker of something, expectation. Vothar's chest tightened. The child was moving. On its own. Gerlach's claws trembled over his console. "Commander, we have a problem." Vothar turned to his officer, dreading the answer. Gerlach's gaze darted back and forth over his readout, his scales visibly paling. The child, it escaped containment. Gerlach swallowed hard. "It's killing our men." Vothar froze. What? His mind reeled, scrambling for logic. They had taken a human child, not a soldier. A weak, defenseless. Screams erupted through the comms. Gunfire. Explosions. Vothar's stomach plummeted as he heard the growling, the inhuman snarls echoing through the lower decks. The child was hunting them. Steele's voice, low and final, cut through the chaos. "You should have let it sleep." The hologram flickered off, and then, from the depth of the ship, the real slaughter began. The Voronezh was dying, not from a human fleet encircling them, but from the thing they had taken. Commander Vothar's claws tightened around the railing of the command deck as another set of screams tore through the comms. It wasn't just a sound of dying men. It was a sheer animalistic terror in their voices. He had heard warriors beg for their lives before. This was something else. Gerlach's hands shook over controls. "Commander," he croaked, "we're losing life signs all across the lower decks. Fire suppression is offline. Bulkheads are failing." A loud crash echoed through the ship, followed by the sound of tearing metal. A voice, raw, broken, desperate, crackled through the intercom. I don't know what it is. It's not a child. It's not." Static. Vothar forced himself to breathe, his mind racing for a solution. His men were dying, but not from human weapons. From one small human. A child. No, not a child. Gerlach's trembling voice cut through the rising panic. "Commander, we need to..." The lights failed. In an instant, the bridge was plunged into darkness, the only illumination coming from the flickering emergency panels. The air felt wrong, the kind of wrong that made a predator feel like prey. Vothar turned slowly, forcing his reptilian vision to adjust to the dim glow of failing monitors. His officers stood frozen, their postures rigid with fear. A low sound rolled through the ship. Not a siren, not the crackling of damaged circuits. A growl, deep, resonant. Gerlach flinched. Vothar didn't move. He had fought in 100 wars, faced human tacticians, assassins, war machines. He had never feared their soldiers. But this was not a soldier. This was something else. A voice whispered through the ship's intercom, soft, almost gentle. "You took me." Gerlach gasped, his claws clicking against the console in frantic movements. "Commander!" "That's inside the bridges system." "That's..." "You stole me." Vothar's breath came slow and steady. He forced his mind to work, to think beyond the fear crawling up his spine. The child, if it even was a child, was moving through the ship systems. No, it was the system now. And now, the air grew thick, oppressive. Vothar's eyes darted to the emergency schematics. Crew positions disappeared one by one, their life signs vanishing into nothing. The ship was becoming a tomb. Then, the main door slid open. A figure stepped through the threshold, small against the towering bulkheads. A human child. But it wasn't human anymore. Its eyes were black voids, endless and cold. Its skin, pale, too pale, stretched over a frame that looked wrong. It twitched like something inside was adjusting, shifting into place. It lifted its head and smiled. "I want to go home." Gerlach screamed. Vothar fired first. His plasma rifle lit up the bridge, the shot streaking straight for the child's head, only for it to stop inches from its face. Suspended in the air, the plasma shivered, then snapped back in a violent arc, slamming into the weapon's officer behind Vothar. The alien's body hit the ground, his chest a molten ruin. Vothar didn't breathe. The child, the thing, tilted its head. "You shouldn't have done that." The bridge exploded into chaos. Gerlach lunged for controls, desperate to override the ship's lockdown. Another officer tried to run, but something unseen grabbed him. His body jerked backward, feet leaving the ground as he vanished into the shadows. And Vothar? He did the only thing he had left. He turned to the comms and screamed. "Steele!" The human general's voice crackled to life. "Commander?" Vothar spun to face the child, watching as his form seemed to glitch, shifting in and out of focus. His claws dug into the console. "Take it back." The child's black eyes locked onto him, and it laughed, a soft, childlike giggle, so horribly out of place amid the destruction. General Steele's voice was quiet. "Too late." The Voronezh case hull screamed as reality itself began to bend inward, and then darkness. Vothar awoke to silence. Not the silence of space, not the dull hum of an idling ship, but absolute nothingness. A void. He struggled to move. His claws scraped against cold metal. His vision blurred, flickering between the shattered remains of his bridge and something else. Something watching him. A presence. Then sound rushed back in. Screams. The bridge was in ruins. What remained of his officers were huddled in the corners, their bodies twitching, their eyes wide with fear that would never leave them. The emergency lights flickered, casting long, jagged shadows. And at the center of it all, the child stood, unharmed, unchanged, except it wasn't really standing. Its feet hovered just above the floor, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, like a broken marionette. Its dark eyes locked onto him, seeing everything. Vothar's voice cracked as he forced out the only words left to say. "What are you?" The child's lips curled into a smile. "I am his son." Vothar's chest tightened. The child, this thing, wasn't just human. It was something else entirely. And it had a father who was coming. A sudden tremor rocked the ship, not from within, but from outside. The viewport flickered, static dancing across the damaged display. But through the distortion, Vothar saw it. The human fleet had arrived. Not the scattered raiding ships he had faced before. Not the scavenger vessels or desperate war bands. This was an armada. Sleek, angular battleships. Hundreds of them. Emerged from the void like wraiths, their weapons glowing with silent fury. And leading them, at the helm of colossal dreadnought, was a man Vothar had only ever heard whispered about in war councils. General Steele, Earth's most feared strategist. A man whose campaigns had left entire planets in ruin. And now he was here, for his son. The comms flared to life. One transmission. Steele's voice was calm, controlled. But beneath it, beneath the stillness, was something far, far worse. "You took my boy." Vothar tried to speak. His throat was dry, his body trembling. He had commanded extermination campaigns. He had ordered the deaths of billions. But never, never had he felt true fear. Until now, a deep hum vibrated through the hull. Weapons charging. No warning. No ultimatums. Just execution. The child, the thing that wore the shape of a human boy, floated toward the viewport, staring out at the gathering storm. Its voice was soft. "Daddy's here." Then, in a single instant, the Voronezh case ceased to exist.